Hey, what is going on, everybody, and welcome back to the College Info Geek podcast, the internet's best resource for getting ahead as a student, and let's face it, a non-student, because we haven't talked about student topics in like 100 episodes, but a terrible resource for downloading a treasure trove of K-pop dance GIFs to post as Twitter responses to people.
I don't have that. I don't have the treasure trove.
I don't have that.
And I apologize.
My K-pop GIF folder is lacking.
My PR company has told me to apologize for this, and I will change my ways going forward.
Same, yeah. I'm committing to downloading more K-pop GIFs. I'm not doing
We
that.
will become K-pop stars for the next podcast. This is an empty promise, but as soon as you've forgiven me, I'll just slide that promise under the rug.
How good are you at dancing, singing, and/or speaking the Korean language?
I used to sing.
Well, hey, okay, actually it's okay.
That's the best I can say.
Some K-pop songs are like half in English.
Also,
so you
that one time when
star.
I was dressed as the dude from the Breakfast Club, I pulled off that Breakfast Club dance.
That's true. Okay. I would say you're well on your way.
I don't know if that's a K-pop move necessarily, the guy from the Breakfast Club, but maybe it was. Maybe he was prescient.
For my part, I've been playing DDR for about 15 years, and I do take vocal lessons. So
I think we got it in us to at least put out something really embarrassing and terrible. That's the standard I'm going to hold us to.
It would probably be really terrible. All right, let's get into the episode. I don't have time for an hour of banter today.
Oh, no.
Chop. Actually, I do have a lot of things to do. I have to write a couple of videos, and this month is actually going to be a bit of a different month for the YouTube channel because I'm going to have Tony kind of handle most of the production stuff because I have a documentary to edit.
Oh, cool.
So I need to give myself time to work on that. Yeah, and I may actually ask you to help him out with editing and production and B-roll.
I hate helping.
Month. Well, if you can't be a team player, then you can't be on the team.
I'm a lone wolf.
Batman works alone. All right. So we are getting very near the end of the College Info Geek podcast. After episode 300, we will be changing the name of this show to reflect the fact that both of us are nearing 30. And basically, we just don't want to have a podcast that has college in the name anymore because we don't want to talk about college every week. But this week, we do want to talk about college. So we're going to, I guess, maybe use this episode to sort of round out the college part of the College Info Geek podcast.
Yeah, just honor the moniker one last time, maybe.
Yeah, we're going to be sharing some of the biggest lessons, overall life lessons that we took from our respective college experiences. I don't know how many lessons you have, so I'm not going to say a specific number, but we're just going to share some lessons. I have a few written down here that I think would be good to share. And before we get into these lessons, just to let you know, the show's name is changing, but the feed is not changing. So if you are subscribed to this show in Spotify or YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, whatever, it doesn't matter because we're not changing the feed.
Yeah, you might notice like the
don't think we
cover
are.
art. The cover art will probably change, and you'll see that, and you'll be like, "What?" Just know, it's still us. It'll be fine.
Still us.
It'll be okay. Shh.
We should probably have our faces in the cover art, just so it's not that confusing.
Probably, it should probably look like it's from the same people. Yeah.
Well, we'll probably do that.
It won't be too scary. We'll guide you through it. We'll hold your hand, and we'll get through this together.
It'll be like a guided meditation.
Yeah.
Now take in a deep breath, and then listen to us blather on for an hour.
Yep.
Do not exhale. You have to hold your breath the entire time. Okay, so we both went to college, as the name of our show implies.
Yep.
We both went to the same college, but I don't think we learned the exact same lessons.
No, and one of mine is actually from community college, which you did not go to. So,
well, that was first college.
Look at
so
that.
Do you want to start out with that
first
one?
College? Sure.
Let's dig into it then.
I went to community college after high school because I didn't know what I was doing with my life. I kind of just followed a friend there, to be honest. But I did well for myself, and it was cool. And the biggest lesson that I took from it, I majored in network and system administrations and desktop support and computery, sit in a server room and fix stuff, kind of a major. The biggest lesson, and all three of my lessons are concepts that I learned in class, but that I apply very strongly elsewhere. So the first lesson that I learned, and it kind of changed how I do everything forever, is the importance of fault tolerance. I had never heard that phrase before. I had never concerned myself that much with the importance of data. But since I learned the concept of fault tolerance, I have never lost an important piece of data. Not once. I have not lost anything that I need. Like you say, when it comes to sort of having things around the house, 2 is 1, 1 is none. That's a very similar thing. That's just fault tolerance for your physical goods. Mm-hmm. But it kind of taught me that I always need to be prepared for things to break. Not just hard drives or computers, but if I'm not prepared for the reasonably likely things that could go wrong, then I'm not prepared at all. And I'm just going to get hit in the face with a surprise and have everything fall apart. And so many people came to me at my job there with that exact same problem because their stuff broke and they were like, here are years of data that was on a flash drive. Please, please, dear God, save my life. And lucky for them, I could save most of it, but not all of it. And there's nothing you can do about that other than prepare yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember being in the college library once. This is when I worked at the campus IT center, so my job was also to support computers. I was not at work at the time, but I saw this girl's MacBook die, and it just would not boot.
The whole
she
computer,
asked me for help. I don't know what the problem with the computer was, but the first thing I asked her was, do you have a backup of your data? And she said no. So every term paper, every assignment, every photo, all of it gone, possibly. I mean, I sent her down to the hardware repair center to see if they could fix it. But, in the case that they couldn't, everything would have been gone. You have to have fault tolerance. And I think there's 2 kind of versions of fault tolerance, because you said that 2 is 1, 1 is none when it comes to things around the house.
Yeah.
For that, that is a philosophy that helps you to avoid a service interruption, to use a really fancy businessy term.
I have a service interruption in Kleenex.
Yeah, but that's what it is. If I have one bottle of shampoo and I run out and I can't go to the store for 3 days, I just don't have shampoo for 3 days. Yeah. That's a service interruption. If I have 2, and the moment that 1 runs out, I put shampoo on my grocery list, there's no interruption because I have the backup. So I'm never buying what I need in the moment. I'm buying the backup.
Yeah.
So that's one piece of fault tolerance. The other piece of fault tolerance is have a copy of your data, have an extra thing around just in case something breaks or goes wrong. You're going to run out of shampoo. So that's just a scheduling thing. But you also know that things breaking is a likely occurrence. It's unlikely that one specific thing will break, but it's likely that something will break at some point. So whatever you need to do your work, you should have a backup of it or some way to replace it very quickly if it does break.
Yeah, my computer's 7 years old. It could break at any moment. Hard drive.
Yeah, I think about that sometimes. I have 3 computers, all of which are powerful enough to edit video. So in the case that something catastrophically wrong happened with my editing desktop, it's not like I would not be able to make videos. I have edited plenty of videos on my laptop, so I could do that. I have backup cameras. If my C500 breaks or something, in the worst case scenario, I can film a video on my phone. But I also have old cameras. For me, to do my job, I have several different tools that are required, and I don't want to let them hinder me from doing my job if one breaks.
Yeah. And even if you can't have, I don't have a spare computer sitting around or anything, but I can tell you right now that other than this specific podcast episode, if I went, grabbed my hammer and just smashed the laptop, I would not be concerned about any data loss. I would just buy a new laptop, which would annoy me because I didn't feel like it right now, but I could do it immediately, get all my real stuff back, and be up and running in like a day.
Yeah. And
It wouldn't be
a
a
lot
problem.
of the stuff you could do from your phone. So your phone is almost a form of fault tolerance. Like you can message our team members on Slack with your phone to
True.
manage them.
It would only stop like web development, really.
And if you really, really had to, it wouldn't even stop that because there are SSH and FTP clients for the iPhone. I have used them before. Just like when I was in college, I was very curious. Can I edit my website from my phone? And I was able to do it.
I bet I could have a pretty decent setup on my iPad probably if I had to. It would annoy me. It wouldn't be as good. But I wouldn't
a Bluetooth
lose
keyboard
things.
and iPad, I would say for you, that constitutes fault tolerance without needing to own a
My biggest
computer.
loss would probably be Lightroom, just because I don't like the mobile version.
Yeah, that's true.
But it would still function.
Mm-hmm. And for you, photography isn't a core part of your job.
Yeah.
So like it would, because it's a big hobby for you, it might be good to be fault tolerant in that regard, but it's not like your income will be threatened if your camera breaks or if Lightroom is inaccessible to you.
Yeah.
Whereas if I have no way to edit video or if I have no camera, then there's no money. I guess I could
definitely not be good.
I guess I could make a pure voiceover video if I had no camera, but yeah, there are certain things I need. So let's give some practical tips for having a backup of data, because fault tolerance is a great overall lesson. Specifically for your data, like at the bare minimum, have something like Google Drive or Dropbox or OneDrive or iCloud. Those are the four most popular ones. And specifically with like Google Drive is the one I use, and Dropbox works the exact same way. They put a folder on your computer, and anything in that folder is synced to the cloud and then synced across any devices that you have. It's important to know that if you have the mobile app, it's not actually downloading those files to your mobile device unless you mark them as offline. Your mobile device is just basically acting like a browser interface. But as long as you put files in that folder, they are synced up to the web and they are fault tolerant in some circumstances. They are fault tolerant to your computer breaking, for sure, because they're on another server somewhere. So if everything that you have is in a Google Drive folder and your computer breaks and you buy a new one, you can easily download it all. You're good. They are somewhat fault tolerant to accidental deletion or encryption via malware. I say somewhat because there is a trash in Google Drive. So if something is deleted, you can go into the trash in the web interface and you can restore it. I think they stay in the trash for 30 days, but verify this because these things change sometimes. And then Google Drive also has file version history.
Yeah, I think Dropbox has.
Don't think you have to pay for I think with Dropbox you may have to pay for an upgraded version. Let me check real quick.
That is possible. I would not know because I already pay so that I can have a lot of space.
I was looking at it recently because Dave at Standard wants us to build like a stock video library for everyone in Standard, and he's like, let's just put it in Dropbox, and my Dropbox is full. And I'm like, I don't want to pay for Dropbox and Drive. Okay, so let's see here. Yeah, Dropbox Plus is like $10 a month. Professionals $17 a month. Let me see if there is file history, version history, viewer history. I don't know what that is, but it's only on Professional. So that may be a thing where you have to upgrade your Dropbox plan. But I'm pretty sure Drive, like with my $10 a month plan, I get 2 terabytes and I get version history for sure. I've gone back and restored files. So if for whatever reason your computer got like encrypted with a ransomware thing, which, another good thing in fault tolerance is have malware bytes or something on your computer if you're running Windows to protect against that and don't go to stupid websites. But in case that happened, there would be some fault tolerance there. But that version history is limited to a certain number of versions, and then the trash is limited to a certain amount of time. So for me, I am not comfortable with Drive being my only form of backup. So I also have Backblaze, which is like $5 a month, and it just backs up my entire computer. So, and I've gotten to the point where even Backblaze isn't enough because we have a server now, and the $5 a month Backblaze plan doesn't cover network drives and servers, which I totally get because you could hook up a basically unlimited amount of storage to your computer via network drives, and it would be a loss for them. So I have to figure out a good way to back up my server. I've done some things, like there's a feature called snapshotting, which basically just takes like a picture of what the file structure looks like every however often you want it to, and then you could roll back to that snapshot or create a copy of your file structure based on that snapshot. So if somebody went to the server and accidentally deleted stuff, or if a virus got in there and encrypted stuff, you could roll back to a snapshot.
Yeah, and I'm checking now. It looks like Dropbox Basic and Plus, you can recover file edits for 30 days, but Professional and Business give you 180 days.
Oh, okay. So
and for a business, I could definitely see why you might want 6 months of history, but for most people, 30 days is going to be fine. And I don't have Backblaze, but I do have an actual external drive. I do a Time Machine backup, which is just the Mac version of backing up your computer. It's a thing for anybody on Windows, but I just have a backup of all my files on a hard drive. They're all on my computer locally. I consider my computer hard drive another thing in case Dropbox fails. And then Dropbox, which I am quite certain that all of the companies doing that have their own super ridiculous RAID fault tolerant systems, because that's how they make their money.
Yeah, for sure. And there's something in computer security called the 3-2-1 system, where you want to have 3 copies of your data, 2 of them accessible very easily, and then 1 of them offsite.
Yeah, so in case my house burns down. That.
Yeah, because so if your house burns down, you have your Dropbox copy, but you also, if for whatever reason, Dropbox goes out of business tomorrow, you have your Time Machine backup.
Now, yeah, because I don't want to be like, I can't leave the house. I got to get my hard drive or I'm ruined. Yeah. That's bad. Now, if Dropbox goes out of business at the same time as my house burns down, I will be sad. And that's what will happen. But I doubt it. Seems really unlikely.
There's something, I forget the term. What is it called? There's a term for 2 unlikely things happening at the same time or very near each other.
Bad? I think it's bad.
It's a bad, the bad thing. I was reading about this. I think it was about like Chernobyl or some like nuclear reactor emergency thing that happened, and it was like the result of some like sign blocking something that people were supposed to maintain, so they didn't see it, and then some other bad thing happened, and the combination of those 2 caused a huge problem. Or Tom Scott had a really good video recently. It was called The Worst Typo I Ever Made. And he was talking about how he was editing a MySQL database, which is basically just for people who aren't web developers, like a database full of information that drives a website. And he made a change to the live database. So mistake number 1, he didn't make a change to like a backed up development version. He was making a change to the one that was live on the website. And then he made a typo that instead of changing, I think he wanted to like change the word content across the entire site to something else. But instead of doing that, he accidentally wrote his command to delete all the content on the website and replace every article with just the word content.
Nice.
Yeah. And so he had a good point in the video. He's like, the typo was incredibly easy to make because it was literally just the result of me using apostrophes instead of backticks, which has a very big consequence, but visually they look very similar. But that wasn't the real problem. The problem was that I was operating on the live version of the database, which I shouldn't have been. I didn't make a backup. And it was the combination of these several stupid mistakes that made my stupid typo catastrophic instead of just like a minor inconvenience.
Always back up stuff like that before you make a big change.
Yeah, exactly.
Every time.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. Friend of mine recently went to reinstall his operating system, and there's a box that's like only delete and reinstall the Windows files, which he checked. And for whatever reason, Microsoft's like, we're just going to wipe every hard drive connected to your computer as well.
Connected to every hard drive,
all hard drives,
not like just the window, not just the one hard drive that the operating system could be on.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, you shouldn't trust things even when they usually work. That's basically the point here.
Never trust things. Yeah, I think like to be a good IT person, you have to be very paranoid and very
Yeah.
untrusting.
Yep.
And if you're a highly trusting person, don't work with computers because they will betray you. Okay, so I'm going to get into my first big lesson. I'm going to call this the Kmart lifer story. So, one of the most impactful professors I had in college was my business communications professor, who basically taught a speech class that was kind of tailored towards business communication. So, we had a basic speech class I had taken, which was required, and then this one was like the next level up. It was like giving pitches if you were going to try to start a business and get investment, like that kind of stuff. And he was probably, like I said, the most impactful professor I had because he gave everyone such great individual attention, and you could just really tell that he cared. And one day he went up to the front of the class and told us why he was a professor. So apparently, before he got his master's degree, he was working as a manager at the Kmart in Ames, which, as far as I know, is still open, which baffles me.
There's a
Maybe,
Kmart in Ames?
maybe it's right next to the movie theater, if you remember where that is. On the other side of town.
I mean, I
There's like
kind of
the-
remember the theater.
Do you remember where the Barnes and Noble used to be, and then it became the BAM?
Oh, yeah, I know that.
Yeah, so there's the theater, and the Kmart, was right
must have
next
been,
to it.
it was invisible to me the whole time, I guess.
That doesn't surprise me. So yeah, my professor was a manager at Kmart, and he apparently was a great manager because one day somebody from corporate came to inspect the store. They were really impressed, and they had a chat with him where they said, we're really impressed with the work you've been doing. We'd actually like to have you come to the corporate headquarters and go through this hire manager training because I think you are lifer material. I think you have the potential to be a lifelong Kmart employee. And my professor said that hearing that, he immediately quit his job at Kmart and signed up to get a master's degree.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. You should really make sure that somebody wants to hear those words before you say them, because lifelong anything has the very big potential to be scary, and a job is one of the more scary things.
Yeah, well,
you really need to make sure they need to be like Dwight Schrute level. That's the greatest thing I've ever heard. Then you can say they're going to be a lifer. Then they'll like it. But if they're not Dwight, you probably shouldn't say that.
Well, I think our generation and possibly the generation before us, they're pretty used to the idea that a career is going to span multiple jobs, possibly multiple different career areas and fields. But older people, they're a little more used to that model where you'd get a job at one place and often work there your entire life. My great-grandfather worked at the cement plant his whole life.
I want you to know that story sounds like a made-up story. It just, my great-grandpappy worked at the cement plant. It just sounds exactly like a story that is a stereotype.
What do you think is more realistic? My great-grandpappy was a web developer, and then he moved into communications. He got a job as a PR agent. That actually parlayed into like a museum curation position for a few months, and then he actually roadied for Jaquan for a while, actually.
That's awesome. It's the coolest grandpa I've ever heard of.
No, he worked at the cement plant his whole life. I remember they used to give their employees like a full turkey for Thanksgiving. It was that kind of place. Instead of like movies. Money for a bonus, they probably should have just given him money. But I don't know. That's just how he did things. So he quits the job, and he's like, he said that word, like, you have the potential to be a lifer, and my life flashed before my eyes, and it just sort of forced me to ask myself, what do I really want to do with my life? Because up until that point, I've been, kicking ass. I've been working really hard, but I'd been kind of pushing off that question. I'm doing my job. I'm going to it. It's fine. And it was that kind of like catalytic moment that made him really face that question and realize this is not what I want to do for the rest of my life. So that kind of taught me the lesson that, I need to be constantly asking myself, is this what I want to do with my life? Because it's very easy to tell yourself, I'm doing fine, I'm working hard, and to push off the questions of, am I actually going down the path I want to be going down?
Yeah, you don't want to wait for a big moment like that, because by the time that big moment comes, you've spent a lot of time not asking the question.
Yeah. But also another lesson I took from this is to not fall victim to the sunk cost fallacy. Because, he'd put a lot of time and effort into working there, and he built up a lot of career capital. Like, he could have had a very, very successful, probably, well, I don't want to say financially successful, because I don't think Kmart's really around anymore. Maybe he could have parlayed that into a Target lifer. Who knows? But he's like, this is not what I want to do. So I'm going to give this up, even though I put a lot of effort into it, because it's not the path I want to go down. And that's what you really have to ask yourself when you're faced with like a sunk cost fallacy situation. And for people who haven't heard this term, the sunk cost fallacy is basically justifying continuing down a certain path because of how much effort you've already put into it. So like say a housing construction company starts to build a house and they invest $100,000 into it, and they realize, oh crap, the foundation of this house is terrible. We accidentally built it on a swamp with a sinkhole, but we've already put so much money into it. We're just going to keep building onto it. Like, that would be the sunk cost fallacy, instead of we should cut our losses because we've built the house on a terrible foundation and go somewhere else.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because the sunk cost fallacy is actually one of my lessons.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it's one of the biggest things I learned from the college business, as I think they called it.
Well, we'll have to go right into that lesson for you from this one, because we didn't collude on this. But actually, when we do episodes like this, we come up with our lessons independently, and sometimes there's overlap. But
that just means they're doubly important. That's a cool thing.
Yeah, that is true. That is cool. But yeah, that had a big impact on me. Just asking myself at regular intervals, is what I'm doing what I want to be doing, and am I willing to give up effort I've put in, money I've put in, time I've put in to change? And usually the answer is yeah, because where this is taking me is not where I want to go.
Yeah.
This week's episode of our show is brought to you by our friends over at Skillshare, which is an online learning library that has thousands of different classes you can use to boost your creative abilities and your skills, and possibly even your career prospects. There are classes that cover music production, productivity, business, marketing, analytics. There are creative classes. I'm currently taking one on Adobe Illustrator. There are beginner Illustrator courses, advanced Illustrator courses, Photoshop, Procreate, Premiere Pro if you want to get into video editing, After Effects, all kinds of great stuff. And today, I want to promo a particularly excellent class on the platform called Video on a Budget: Prepare for Your Shoot Without Breaking the Bank by Christopher Rhodes. If you haven't heard of Christopher Rhodes, he runs an amazing channel on YouTube called YC Imaging, where he kind of gives a lot of behind the scenes looks into how he shoots music videos for the most part. And his music videos are freaking fantastic. And this class kind of gives you a centralized resource for kind of picking his brain on how he scouts locations, on how he gets great looking shots without having a ton of super expensive gear. So if you want to up your video shooting game, if you are a music video producer, or if you're just making your own kind of videos, there's a lot you can take from his expertise. His class is one that I highly recommend. Also on Skillshare, you're going to find 2 different classes from yours truly. I've got one class on building a productivity system, which is the combination of your to-do list, calendar, your habit tracking system in some cases, your note-taking system, your file management system, how to make all of these things kind of mesh together and work in tandem so nothing ever slips through the cracks. That is one class I've got on there. And there is another class all about building strong habits. And the best part is if you go over to Skillshare.com/geek and sign up, you're going to get a 2-month free trial, which means you can go take Christopher's class, you can go take my classes, give the platform a test drive, see if it's valuable to you. And if it is, afterwards, it's only $10 a month. So it's incredibly affordable. And again, there are thousands of different classes. So there's always something new that you can be using to push your skills and abilities. So once again, go over to Skillshare.com/geek where you can activate that 2-month free trial and try it out and also support our show. Big thanks as always to Skillshare for being a supporter of our show and sponsoring this episode. And another huge thanks this week goes out to our second sponsor, which is Brilliant. If you want to improve your mastery in the areas of math, science, or computer science, while also becoming a better creative problem solver, which is an incredibly useful skill in today's career landscape, Brilliant is an excellent resource for you. They have over 60 in-depth courses covering topics ranging from calculus to the basics of number theory to probability, statistics, science classes like gravitational physics, classical mechanics, and computer science classes ranging from the basics of Python programming, the nitty-gritty of actual algorithm design, sorting methods, kind of these fundamental things you need to learn as a computer scientist or even as a developer or programmer. These are really, really useful concepts, and going into some really cool areas of computer science like computational biology and the basics of computer memory and how search engines work. And the best part about all of these courses is they are built on the principle, the bedrock foundational concept of active learning. So instead of just passively intaking material, you get immediately thrown into challenging problems that you have to solve on your own. But these problems are logically sequenced, they're bite-sized, so they're not too frustrating, but they do get you actively working. They keep you more interested in the material. And because problem-solving practice has universal benefits, with every course you take, with every problem you solve, you become better overall at solving the problems that lie in your future. So if you want to start learning today, you can go over to brilliant.org/collegeinfogeek and sign up. And if you're one of the first 200 people to use that link, you're going to get 20% off your annual premium subscription. Big thanks, as always, to Brilliant for sponsoring this episode and supporting our show. And let's get back into it. Let's get your thoughts on sunk cost.
So the sunk cost fallacy has been, I just really like when I hear like a concept that sort of changes how I look at life, sort of a philosophical thing like that. It's big, it's widely applicable, but I really like the idea and the reminder that if you come up to a situation and you're not happy with it, and there's a metaphorical fork in your road of I don't know how many tines are in your fork. It could be a trident, I don't know. But the point is, from whatever point you find yourself in life, you should be considering which of these paths going forward do I like the best, not which of these paths retroactively justifies the path I took last time. And that's a really big thing for me because it's super hard for me to quit stuff. I love so many things that I do. I love languages. It was so hard for me to decide to stop taking Mandarin and German because I wanted to focus on graduating a semester early. And it was really hard for me to quit my first job out of college because I essentially changed careers immediately. I immediately got nerve damaged out of my first career is what happened. Mm-hmm. And it was really hard for me to quit writing for Polyglot, my language blog. And it wasn't necessarily because I wanted to keep doing it. It was always like, but this is who I've been. What am I if I get rid of the thing I've put so much into? This is where my life has been going. What do I do now? Well, the answer is choose whatever you want. That time's already gone, so I did quit all of those things, and I don't regret it now. I don't have a problem with it, but it's very hard to do because I get everything wrapped up in my identity, and it becomes hard to quit anything. I mean, my last name is German. It hurt me to quit German.
Yeah,
and I was getting really good at Mandarin tone pronunciation. And I didn't want to quit something that I was doing well at, but it was just a sunk cost. Sure, I could be good at that, and I put time into it, but moving forward, it's not more important than the alternatives, and that's the only question that I should be asking myself.
Yeah. And I think it's worth realizing that at some point later in life, you could come back to something like Mandarin or German, and it's going to feel at first like you're starting from scratch, but in reality, it's a introductory process to kind of unearthing things you've already learned in the distant past.
Like
and
it probably
it's quicker than easier. You think. Yeah. I mean, I stopped playing guitar for 5 years After all my guitar gear got stolen, I just never bothered to go get a new guitar. And when I moved to Denver, I got a new guitar, and it felt like I was starting over again for a while. But eventually it came back fairly quickly, actually. And before I knew it, I was like, hey, I know how to play, if not just as good, if not better than I was before I quit.
Yeah.
That was a long time. So I actually had another lesson written here, but as I look at it now, it's very similar to this concept. So I think it's actually kind of like another bullet point here. I gave up on the student honors program in my senior year. In addition, I gave up on the idea that I wanted to graduate with all A's and perfect grades. So both of these, especially honors, were born out of the realization that what I would gain from achieving graduating with honors, getting perfect grades, was not worth what I was giving up by dedicating my time to the requirements for both of those goals. Because, I mean, if you really think about it, what did I want to do after college? Well, I'd done my internship. I realized I don't care about computer networking. I thought it would be cool. Turns out I'm not wired to maintain things. I like creative work. I like writing. I like podcasting. I like making videos, things like that. I hadn't made videos at the time, but I liked blogging and podcasting. And I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to work for myself. And perfect grades were going to do nothing for me going towards that goal. Because what's a transcript full of A's going to do for somebody who wants to start their own business?
Yeah.
Some of our most successful entrepreneurs are people who dropped out of school. And that the lesson there is not that you need to drop out of school to start a company, or that dropouts have some special innate talent to start businesses. But the lesson there is that perfect scores in a pre-prescribed curriculum that is intended to ready you for a job in a certain field don't really help you out when you're building your own company, especially if the major you're in doesn't have all that much to do with the company you're building. So that didn't make sense. And then with the honors program, during my senior year, you had to take a few classes on top of your normal classes, and then you also had to do some really big project. And the reward you would get for doing all this work would be to graduate with a golden cord around your shoulders on top of your robes, and you would be able to write on your resume, honors graduate. And I guess maybe you would have access to some sort of honors alumni network. I don't know. I can tell you right now, I have never once taken advantage of the alumni network I have access to just because I went to that college. I could, but I've met a lot of people just doing what I want to do. And again, like being somebody who wants to run their own company, who wants to build a blog, build a podcast, build a YouTube channel, graduating with a cord around my neck doesn't push me any further towards those goals. So it was a hit to my pride to let those things go, but that's all I really lost. Pride and a little bit of that sunk cost, shot of pain. Like, I already put 3 years of time into the honors program. I did 3 years worth of all the requirements. I don't want to give up now, but really I did want to give up now because I wanted to use that time to build my business.
Yeah, like when your goals change, that's one of the biggest times the sunk cost fallacy might trick you. Mm-hmm. Just because it's like, but I almost became the person I wanted to be. But if it's not the person you currently want to be, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, we could look at this from another angle. Like there's another question here. What if the business fails and you have to fall back on your degree to get a job? Wouldn't it be easier to get a job if you had honors grad on your resume? Wouldn't it be easier to get a job if you had a perfect 4.0 GPA? And I don't know. That's a question that's hard to answer definitively because everyone goes into different fields. And, say you're trying to get into med school, maybe they are going to put a little bit more importance on grades. But the kind of jobs that I would fall back on, I believe that I would have a better chance of cutting through the noise and standing out if I was able to tell the story of how I worked to start my own business. I think that would actually make a bigger impact than being like, I'm an honors grad. Did you know that?
Yeah, and depending on what age you are, like the whole honors grad thing is eventually not going to count all that much. It's going to be like, okay, sure, you were an honors grad, but you're 40, Jim. What have you done since then? What have you done in the last like 28 years of your life? I'm an honors grad. That doesn't
Not even 40.
That means nothing to me.
Not even 40. Let's put it at right now. I'm 29 right now, and if I went out looking for a job, I do not think that people would care one iota about me being an honors grad or not.
Yeah. At some point, your fault tolerance is just
7 years. They would probably be out. Well, 7 years is longer than 4 years. What have you done with those 7 years? We are more interested in that.
Yeah, you don't want to rest on your laurels.
Mm-hmm.
They're not comfy.
That's a lesson I've taken since graduating from college. The amount of time since the end of college, it gets away from you.
Yeah, we've been out of college longer than we were in there.
Not quite
transformative.
But close. I think it's 7 years. So it's not. Oh wait, longer. I thought you said double longer.
Yeah, not twice as much.
Yeah, we're getting close to twice as long out of college as we were ever in it. Well, at least I am, because I was only there for 4 years. I think you were there. Were you there for 4.5?
I was 5? At university for 3.5, but I was at community college for 2 years. I got 2 degrees out of it, so I kind of messed up the years.
Yeah. But yeah, it does get away from you. And I guess I'll segue that into my final lesson here, which is something I learned quite quickly after I left college, which is that college and honestly high school, both of these have a lot of similarities to the real world, whatever version of the real world you live in. There are differences for sure. But I remember being in high school and imagining that college was going to be so wildly different, that the workload was going to be so wildly different and bigger and much harder. And then I remember being in college thinking the real world was going to be so wildly different. And then I did my internship and I was like, well, there are some differences, but this isn't that much of a radical departure from what I do every day in college. All of my systems that I use to stay on top of my tasks in college, they pretty much work exactly as they did there here.
Yeah.
A to-do list still works. I was using Todoist in college, or not Todoist. I was using Wunderlist in college. I was using Wunderlist in my internship.
Rest well, sweet prince.
Mm-hmm. Email. Yep, you use that in college. You use that in your internship and in your job. A lot of the same exact habits. Checking your calendar every day, making sure you get your events on the calendar right when they are communicated to you so you don't forget them, so you don't let them slip through the cracks. A lot of it applies. I found that the biggest difference was the day wasn't broken up for me, which was something I really appreciated in college. Like, yeah, I've got 4 or 5 classes. They're in different rooms across campus. I'm here for an hour and then I walk across campus and now I'm here. And then I got to walk to the dining hall to have lunch with my friends. And then I got to go all the way across campus again. And I remember in college, I was kind of annoyed by it sometimes, but then I did my internship and it's like, oh, well, if I choose, I could just sit here in this cubicle all day long because this is the only place I have to be. This is where all my work is. I kind of don't like that.
Honestly, I mean, this isn't one of my lessons, but I really feel like that is a huge thing from college that should be taken. Going to multiple locations in a day makes that day feel like I was alive.
Yeah.
And staying in one makes the day forgettable, compressed into the rest of my memories like an efficiently made zip file. Mm-hmm. It's not interesting anymore. And honestly, once I feel I can actually go to places again, I might try to do some sort of on purpose. Okay, every 90 minutes or so, I need to like take a walking break and switch locations for a bit.
Yeah.
So that I don't let, I look back someday, 20, 30 years from now, and I'm like, what did I do in my late 20s? And then I only remember sitting at this desk. That's not great. Got to mix it up.
Yeah. I don't know if this is a college lesson, but I have been thinking, I had a certain number of goals when I was in college, or an early grad, and I've achieved a lot of them. But I noticed that if I don't purposely vary up my day, if I don't purposely take breaks or schedule trips or whatever it is, what I do with my average day is kind of exactly the same as it was back then. And it's funny, like you have all these goals and you kind of envision this picture of what your future day is going to look like, what your future self is going to, be doing all the time because you've achieved all these things you set out for yourself. It's like, oh, well, I'm working really hard right now, but I'm putting off getting into, singing lessons like I want to do, or going to this country I want to visit, or whatever it is. And to a certain degree, that is useful. It is useful to delay certain types of gratification when you have strong goals that need a lot of time investment. But, years down the road, if you find yourself doing the same exact thing, you have to ask yourself, like, if I don't make a conscious change, will this ever be different? Or will there always be some goalpost that I have moved out in front of me so that I am always pushing in the exact kind of way? This is kind of a lesson you learn out of college, because college gives you structure, it gives you regimentation, and most importantly, I think it gives you a fresh start every new semester.
Yeah.
Forces you to make a big change.
Yeah, hence my notebook system, hence everything. The biggest struggle of adulthood for me is that feeling that monotony is default, but it's not inevitable.
Yeah. Yeah, so you have to make a conscious choice to not allow that monotony to creep in and keep learning. Actually, that is one of the reasons why college feels very similar to this real world life I now live in, is because I still take on learning projects. And I know you do too. Like you've got lessons scheduled with language teachers.
I probably got too much stuff going on, honestly, but it is like college. I mean, in college you take 5-6 classes. I had 21 credit hours one semester.
Yeah.
This is just what I do. I overwhelm myself with a bunch of things. Some of them go better than others, but at least some of them went well at all.
Dealing with overwhelm is a topic for another episode, I would say.
Yeah.
But yeah, same. Like I'm taking a guitar course right now.
It.
I've got vocal lessons, and then I read books too. So it's kind of like mini college all the time. Oh, but the other thing is, like, college also creates for you opportunities to interact with other people, which you don't always get.
That one's got to be
in the real world.
I got to figure out how to force that one once it feels more reasonable to go outside again. Because I went to like a French meetup. No one was there one time, and then I never tried again. Mm-hmm. And like that's a bad pattern to get into.
Yeah, so I guess the final big lesson is ask yourself, what are the elements that college sort of brought to you that you have lost since you have left college, if you're a listener who is not in college anymore. Or, I mean, I would say, even if you are a listener who's in college, you're probably not on campus right now because we're all at home.
True.
What are the elements
do you miss about that?
The physical element, being in college physically brought to you? How can you continually recreate those? Because it takes effort once you're gone. Yeah. That's one of the most valuable things that I got from college, was just easy proximity to so many different people, to so many different clubs and organizations and events. It was sort of like college didn't even meet you halfway. They met you like 75% of the way.
Yeah. Honestly, it was being around so many people felt so good. I was excited when I walked out of the library and I could hear like 6 languages in 4 minutes. And I was like, there are so many people here. Mm-hmm. There are possibilities in every direction. You got to kind of force that to happen, because if you're in your house, there really aren't possibilities in every direction except for outside. Yeah. You gotta go.
But even setting aside the current pandemic, when you get into the adult routine of go to work, come home, it becomes very easy for those opportunities to never present themselves.
Yeah.
So you have to go find them. Did you have any other lessons?
I had one last one.
Okay.
Not too complicated, but again, it has changed how I look at everything. And it's the concept of overhead. Just not only in a business sense, but overhead being the amount of, for a business, usually the amount of money that you spend on things that are not directly related to the business model. So a brick and mortar store, you got to pay rent, you got to pay electricity, you got to pay for water probably because that's useful. Things like that aren't directly what you're trying to do. Now, in a business sense, that's important to keep track of. Part of the reason web businesses can succeed so well, including what we're doing, is because we are not currently paying for a giant office with its own electricity and with its own stuff. We can sort of do whatever we want.
Yeah.
But for me, I've taken overhead into account for a lot of what I do in a personal sense. And also, this was before I knew that, but it lines up really well with what the 20-second rule accomplishes, because the idea is that you're removing the effort you put toward any given thing that isn't for the thing. The time it takes me to set up my piano and get it running is very little because it's right there in the living room. So my overhead is low. Almost no effort is put into that. But the effort it might take me to go make food, there's a lot of overhead in there because the kitchen is a mess right now. So I'm going to have to move a bunch of extra stuff out of the way. And that's effort that isn't going toward the end goal. It's like side quests that you have to take on before you can do the important part. Mm-hmm. Maybe overhead is a side quest.
Yeah. And if you can batch those side quests, then there's more time for the main quest.
Yeah, it made me more consciously consider what percentages of my time are going toward what. Which ones are going toward the things I'm proud of, and which ones are going toward the upkeep or the weird chores that stand in the way of what I want to be doing that I'm proud of.
Yeah. I was thinking about the concept of minimalism the other day, and I'm very much not a minimalist.
I mean, even just hearing that word made me feel good.
There are a lot of arguments for minimalism that people have, but I think one of the most powerful is the fact that everything you buy or introduce into your life has some kind of maintenance routine that it requires. Could be as simple as I have to dust this new piano I bought every so often. If I bought an acoustic piano, I have to have it tuned every so often. And the more things you introduce into your life, the more maintenance routines you also introduce into your life if you want those things to be in working order when you want to use them. So that's, I think, one of the most powerful arguments for introducing a little bit of minimalism into your life. For me, the whole allure of like a stark white, clean, unbroken line of sight, white walls, all that kind of stuff, I don't care about that. I don't feel stress at owning a lot of things. That doesn't resonate with me. But not having to dedicate a bunch of my time to upkeep on things.
Yeah.
That is
a lot of minimalism
concept.
Is reducing overhead. It's like what percentage of your life do you want to be spending just upkeeping your possessions? If you have a lot of them, the answer is going to become a lot, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, there's ways around it. Like if you don't want to clean your house, you can pay someone to clean your house. You can pay someone to mow your lawn for you.
True.
You can still have a lawn.
Well, then you have a literal cost of overhead.
Yeah, then it just becomes
now it's a dollar
money
amount.
cost. Well, I'm just a minimalist about my money, so.
Oh, okay, that's fair.
You don't want to have too much. You don't
want to have too much.
Yeah.
I mean, the more money you have, the more you have to keep it safe. So there is some truth to that. Once you become rich enough, if you become like a billionaire and you don't pay for security, that seems like some necessary overhead you should be paying for.
They do say more money, more problems.
It's true. Once you get to a certain point, I'm going to say more money is less problems up to a certain point.
Yeah.
But, in hip hop, sometimes you got to rhyme and you can't go into a lot of nuanced detail without kind of detracting from the meaning of the song.
Well, it's like
and
bell
Biggie
curve.
Wasn't trying to confuse me. I know that.
It's a bell curve, and what they're rapping about is like the far right side of the curve.
Yeah.
Because once you get to a certain point, it's like, well, yeah, more money is great, but then after that, is it? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great. Get it forever.
Infinite money.
Probably
give me all of it. All right. Well, I think that's going to probably wrap the show up, since that was your final lesson, right?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, If you are watching this on YouTube or you happen to frequent our YouTube version of the podcast, I'm curious if you're done with college or you're still in college, but you have some significant life lessons that you have learned, maybe share them in the comments for this episode over on our YouTube channel. And if you haven't subscribed to our show yet, you can do so on YouTube, or you can do so on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Man, podcasting is such a decentralized thing, which
Very much
has
so.
its benefits, but it's also a little bit confusing because you have to mention like 8 different podcast platforms when you're doing your subscribe thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think Spotify is like, it's becoming one of the easiest ones. The
That
only
does
reason I
make
don't like
sense.
it is because the show notes don't come in like in full detail there.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I don't think it even supports links to opening up like the full show notes page. So it's kind of annoying, but
Well, good thing we have a short link, I guess.
yeah. Oh
It
yeah,
ain't
there is a short
perfect,
link. That's going to be cigpodcast.com/297. So if you are on Spotify and they are not letting you click a link to our show notes, you can just easily type that into your browser and click anything that we happen to mention. I'm not sure if we happen to mention anything in particular. Oh, we mentioned some backup tools, Backblaze,
That's true.
Dropbox, Google Drive. So yeah, if you take nothing else away from this episode, which was full of philosophy, make sure your stuff is backed up. Please don't
Yeah,
let
don't
dumb
be sad.
series of mistakes or computers betraying you make you lose something that you don't want to lose. That is going to be it. You can always go over to collegeinfogeek.com to check out any of the latest articles we're creating. YouTube.com/ThomasFrank is where my new videos are. And if you want to subscribe to the show, cigpodcast.com with no trailing slasher numbers is where you can go to get links to all the main podcast platforms if you just want like a centralized place for it. If you want to support this show, a review on iTunes, Apple Podcasts actually is what it's called now. Man, I'm old school. Calling it iTunes is helpful as always, or you can share this with a friend and let them know what your favorite episode is to get them started. Beyond that, thanks as always simply for hanging out and listening to the show, and we will see you in the next episode. Stay cute.